late. She's just stuck in traffic. She's on her way. Actually, I see her coming in now. So hold off. She's walking right in and.
That's the sort of day it's been.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the younger, and you know Sheriff is.
Yes. Hi, Walt. How's everybody? Do we have a quorum, Gurjeet?
We've got 1, 2, 3.
We're having at least one more.
We do not have a
coming.
Fatima.
Because we have 4 right now.
Yeah, you have 4. You need 1 more, yep.
We need 1 more.
Okay.
Well, I
Well,
was saying we could start things off if you want, or if you want to wait till we can go in.
no, out of respect for your time, Sheriff, I think we'll go ahead and kick off our meeting. And I'm terribly sorry to be out of breath and late.
I know.
66 was a nightmare
Yeah.
today, and there was a horrible crash, but
And Helen, we also have Junho Park joining in virtually.
wonderful. Good evening, Jinho.
Hello.
So, Sheriff, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations
Thank you.
on your results from yesterday. We, as a commission, had an opportunity to speak with Beth Arthur
Sure.
about 1.5 years ago. And as I shared when Sheriff Arthur was here, our purview as a commission is sort of broadly to sort of oversee matters of human rights within our community. But we also have a mandate that looks to EEO matters and issues within the county workforce. So those are sort of 2 touch points where our work, I think, overlaps with yours. So we would just sort of love for tonight to be a meet and greet and an opportunity for us to get to know you better, and sort of hear about your priorities as you take the role officially. I guess today is day 1, day 2 in the seat. So we'd love to hear from you, and then we'll open it up to the commissioners who are here for Q&A. That's sort of our agenda for tonight.
Sure. Here's Fatima.
Great.
Hi, Fatima.
How are you? You're good, Rajiv. Come on in. Good timing.
Good.
Yeah, anywhere. So please take it away, Sheriff. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think I know everyone here, or I've met you before. So my name is Jose Quiroz. I'm now, as of Tuesday, elected sheriff of Arlington County, and I've been with the department 22 years. I started the day before 9/11. Before that, I was in the Marine Corps. I served in the Marine Corps for 4 years. And before that, I grew up in Arlington. So I grew up on Columbia Pike, at 5550 Columbia Pike. And both of my parents came to this country in the 60s. Both of my parents are from Honduras. And so we settled in Arlington in the early 80s. And growing up on Columbia Pike, I attended Arlington Elementary. I attended Kenmore. And I went to Swanson for a bit. And then I went to Bishop O'Connell High School. As a public figure, I will share not something that is easy to talk about, but my father committed suicide when I was 13. And so, we talk about mental health and trauma, and this person has lived through that. And so that's why, when I share with folks that I went to Bishop O'Connell, a lot of times folks will say, oh, wow, you have money, rich kid, this and that. And I'll tell you, my mother and grandmother worked very hard to put me through Bishop O'Connell because they wanted, like all of us do, better for their children and an opportunity. And so for all those reasons, I sit here and I'm able to sit here because of all the things that my parents did for me and things that I've learned at a really young age, how to struggle and how to overcome. And so after graduating from high school, I knew my mom didn't have the means for me to go to school. And Bishop O'Connell is a school that the majority of students go to college. But I knew that wasn't easy for my family. And so rather than just not do anything, I joined the Marine Corps. One of my principals was a colonel in the United States Marine Corps. He was tough. Had a lot of conversations with him for being late to school and different things as a young man. And at the end of the day, I wanted to be like him. He was someone that people respected, and his service meant something. And so I joined the Marine Corps, and I went to Parris Island. I was stationed in Camp Lejeune for a little bit. And ultimately, after leaving Arlington, I was sent back to the area, and I was stationed at Marine Barracks, Washington, D.C., and I served there for 4 years. That's the home of the Commandant, the home of the infamous evening parades. And so all of those things, and as we reflect this, today we had an opportunity to celebrate the Veterans Day celebration up front. And I mentioned my family, but my service in the military really taught me something, especially a young man that didn't have a father. And so moms love their children, and moms will let you do, pretty much whatever you want. And so I knew my mom cared a lot about me, but I wanted that structure. And mom gave me structure, but I needed that structure from the masculine side. And so I found that in the Marine Corps. And to this day, I take pride in my service, and definitely shaped me as well as my family. And so when I was in the Marine Corps, I met my wife to be, and so I knew when you're not married, you can't take your significant other with you in the military. So I was headed to Japan. So I said, oh, I'm not going to miss this opportunity. And so we met in 1999, and we're still together. We're still together, and we've grown up together, excuse me. And I bring her up because I'm proud of my relationship, and relationships start when you're young, in your family. But I had the opportunity to meet someone that was not related to me and start a relationship, and we're still together. We have 2 children, and because of her support and because of the one person I've been with since 1999, I ran for sheriff, and she supported me. There's many events, and there's many things that take up your time. When I asked her if I should run for sheriff, the first thing she said was, how can I help you? What can I do to help you as sheriff? And so that shows you how unselfish the relationship is. It wasn't, well, how long are you going to be at work, or is your time going to be taken away? So I can't show up every day because the leader of the organization has to show up. Every day it's hard. There's a lot going on, but the leader sets the tone. I believe that everyone looks to the leader. And so if you come in, you're having a bad day and it's all over your face, or the vibe, I believe it's contagious. So I try my best to come in, and I'm a human being. Of course, there's tough days, but every day you come in and you show up to do the work. And so, like I said, I'm married, I have 2 children, and I've been with the department 22 years, started the day before 9/11, and really grew in the department. Was assigned into the jail, like every entry-level deputy is, at least when I started. And so I'm jail certified, court certified, civil process certified, and law enforcement certified. I have 4 certifications through Richmond, through DCJS, Department of Criminal Justice Services. So had the opportunity to really grow and learn in the department. And yeah, that's, unless you have any other questions, I could go on and on and on about my career, but it's been a great career. This is like yet another phase, and you never stop learning and listening. And do you know everything? I had many opportunities to reflect, and a good friend of mine that knows both me, myself, and knows Sheriff Arthur says, Jose, you can't compare yourself to Sheriff Arthur 2023 because that's someone who had 36 years of experience. You compare yourself to a new sheriff. And so that's what I am, and I'm learning, and there's an opportunity to, I believe, take the agency to the next level. It's 2023, there's innovation, there's technology. Some things are, revisit strategies and ways of thinking and doing things. One thing along my campaign, and yesterday I took the day off, not to relax and watch TV and all that, not to get into the political world, but all those signs you see in the community, they have to come out of the ground somehow and get back into the recycling. And the community, I know they're irritated with seeing them, and so I wanted to pick up my signs. So not only, do you have to prepare for speeches and forums and debates and still show up to work, but I was picking up my own signs, and I was doing it on George Mason. And a former person who was incarcerated pulled up. Now they work for the refuse, the county. And they were like, hey, and so they were like, remember you when you started? And I mean, he stopped traffic with his truck, but he was so happy to see me. And he says, let me get those signs. He's like, you shouldn't be carrying these signs. But those are the kinds of relationships that I have. And you foster them, and they're built out of respect. You know, there's 351 people right now, as of right now, in the facility. And so those are 351 human beings. We could get into a long discussion of how they get there, and for the most part, you know, the sheriff is responsible for the jail and the courthouse, and serving civil process, and the police that arrest folks, and they patrol and by the enforcement in the community. And so but once they get into the facility, it's the job of the sheriff and the sheriff's staff to ensure that people are safe. And it's not easy. And it's not, you can say that over and over again. And, but that's what I signed up for. If it was easy, everyone would do it. And while I've met many wonderful leaders in the community, they're like, yeah, I can do that job. And so we all have our special place of where we want to be and where we strive. And so here, technically, I'm finishing Sheriff Walker's term. This is still her term until the end of 2023. My term starts in 2024. But learned a lot and continue to learn, listen, be open to speaking to folks. And you're not always going to agree with everyone, and you're not always going to have the answer. I don't claim to have every answer, but you have someone that's here to serve. I've been serving since I was 18, and yeah, it's really the story's full circle. You know, it's yeah, it's amazing. I never thought as a kid growing up in Arlington, after my father passed away, my mom never learned how to drive, and so it was tough. We had to run the bus. And as soon as I was 15 and a half, I got my license. And my father's buried in Maryland. So I was at 15 and a half driving on 495 to get to Aspen Hill, Maryland. And so I don't tell you this for pity, because I don't need anyone's pity, or I tell you this because that's what I lived through. And so if I did that at 15 and a half, taking care of my mother and my brother and younger brother, life is a heavy lift. And you know, wearing this, it's more than just pinning it on. You know, it's living it and building the trust with you all during difficult times and in the fun times and the great times. You know, the parades, and then there's times that are not as tough, not as easy. So that's a little bit about me, probably a lot of it, but
Well, Sheriff,
just to be
first,
transparent with you.
yeah, first of all, thank you for your service on this eve of Election Day, and thank you for sharing your history with us. It's always so cool to hear somebody who is serving in Arlington County, growing up in Arlington County. Yes. You're a real Arlington County lifer. And thank you for sharing with us your history. Now that we have a more full deck of commissioners, I suggest we'll go around and we'll introduce ourselves to you.
Great.
And then we'll open it up for Q&A. So maybe I'll start and we'll go around this way. My name is Helen Conley. I'm serving as the chair of this commission. I have sat on this commission with Roland and with others for probably 13 years, 11, 12, 13 years now. And it's been a pleasure to serve the county. We'll go over here to Stephen.
Stephen Krieger, 22nd term coming up on the commission, and I have a small law firm here in Arlington.
Roland?
Excuse me, Roland Watkins. Been a member of the commission since about 2012, and prior to that, I served on the Equal Employment Opportunity Advisory Commission. And again, congratulations.
My name is Fatima Argan. I am, I guess, one of the relatively new members of the commission. I'm honored to be here. My background is, I do have a background in human rights in various capacities throughout my career. I don't think we have enough time to go through it, but one of the things that I have been focused on is, throughout, definitely since the past decade, is interfaith dialogue. And I want to continue to work in that capacity to see how we can, keep communities safe, unify communities around common goals of what we can do to help our community, and working in the interspace to make that, interfaith space to make that happen. And congratulations again.
Very nice, Walter Sargent. I've been a member, it's going to be 3 years, nothing compared to the other folk, but I've been here. I'm a resident of Arlington for about 23 years. I'm originally from Costa Rica, and I love Arlington, and I've been here working with everybody, with Roland, and then making sure that everyone who's not heard can be heard. And I'm a total advocate for the Latino community. And welcome. I'm glad to congratulate you.
Nice to see you again. Was I Assistant County Manager for ADA Human Rights in the I've been with the county since 2018.
Wanda, Steve?
Okay, Jose knows, we know each other. I've worked in the sheriff's office for 30 years. I live in Arlington. I'm interested in being a member of the Human Rights Commission. I'm currently a member of the NAACP Arlington chapter, and glad to be here tonight.
Welcome, Wanda. We're very glad to have you.
Hi, Stefan Klein. Congratulations and looking forward to your service in this new role. I've been a member of the commission for about 1.5 years, although I was a commissioner many years ago for about a decade. But thank you.
And Junho, I know you're on Teams. If you'd like to come off and introduce yourself, you're welcome to. Okay, well, feel free to do so later in the meeting. I'll open it up to the rest of the commission for Q&A, but Sheriff, I'd love to hear a little bit about your goals or your priorities as you sort of take over the role from, as you mentioned yourself, Sheriff Arthur was in the seat for 23 years. So, what strategies or goals do you have? Are there any areas that you're perceiving or anticipating making changes? And if so, can you help us understand what they are?
Sure, thank you. So I have 3 initiatives, and I'd like to say everything goes into one of these 3 drawers. And so the first one is running a safe and progressive jail. Safe stands out, progressive stands out, focused on rehabilitation. I'll give you all 3 and then I'll go back. And the second one is community engagement. And the third one is staff wellness and development. And so going back to the first one with running a safe and progressive jail focused on rehabilitation, like I said earlier, there's 351 human beings in the facility right next door. And so when they come in, when folks come into the facility, it's a detention facility, so someone's being charged with a crime. And so they're brought to the facility by the police department for the most part. There's 7 departments that bring arrestees to Arlington Detention Facility, which I'd like to highlight because I think it's important. It's not only Arlington Police. You have State Police, you have Park Police, you have Pentagon Police, you have Airport Police, you have Falls Church, you have Metro Transit, because of Metro Trains. But you get the gist of it. Yeah, no, not DC. So anything that's, any crime that's committed on Arlington County property. And so that's, just with even those, it's a lot. There's people constantly on the trains, constantly on the roads, the airport, Pentagon, all of them. So you get the gist. So these departments make an arrest and they bring them to the Arlington Detention Facility. And so folks come in, they're arrested and not, whether they're treated on the street by the fire department or a medic, at some point, they're deemed clear to be brought into the facility. And so the person is brought into the facility. We do an assessment. It starts with our staff, putting eyes on the person and seeing what condition they're in, talking to the person, engaging in conversation. And so if we note that something is not right, we would ask our medical vendor, our medical in this case, is our medical vendor, medical with a K, M-E-D-I-K-O. And so the nurse would come down to the booking area and make an assessment. We are constantly working with police department and fire department to come up with ways that would care for the person. As you can imagine, the police department is short-staffed. We're short-staffed. And so if the person is not fit to come into the facility, the officer has to sit at the hospital with the person. And then it's the hospital overwhelmed, depending on what day it is. I don't have the staff to necessarily have every single person go out to the hospital 911 and sit, because I still have 351 people in the facility. And so taking the situation when the person comes in and assessing of what needs to be done. Once the charges are brought, let's say the person's cleared. The person is cleared to stay in the facility. The officer goes forth with paperwork, and then everything's taken to the magistrate. So think of the jail as it's a building. It's the building right at the end, and the sheriff is running the jail. But the magistrate is the one that's making the determination for probable cause and setting the bond. And so the magistrate decides, is Jose going to be released on personal recognizance? Is he going to put an amount of money for me to post? And so the magistrate makes that determination. Whether the person is released on their own recognizance or they're held, that's when the sheriff comes in. And so we do the booking, the fingerprints and all that. And let's say the person is staying. That's when more assessments are done, mental health assessments, case management assessments, medical screening assessment, and then we determine where the person will be housed. But my point of telling you that brief, going through that, is because when I say running a safe and progressive jail, when I say safe, I want to ensure that everyone that is coming into my facility can be kept in my facility. The jail is not a hospital. It's not equipped to be a hospital. And so just the 7, 8 of us in here have our own issues. And so when someone comes in the door, you don't know what the issue might be. Has the person been taking medication? Has the person been taking care of themselves? Is the person from even around here? Are they from the airport, where they're from California? They don't have their medicine, they don't have this. They're not speaking to us. They're not talking. They're not cooperating. All these things that come in to play. And so the sheriff's office and the staff are now charged with ensuring that this person gets the care that they need while they're in the facility. And so ensuring that folks can come in and be taken care of is extremely important. I don't have the luxury of saying to the magistrate, no, we're not taking Jose because he's just, if the magistrate says the person is staying, then they're staying. Now, if there's a medical emergency, we would send them out with the police department, and we're working with the fire department and Dr. Reed Smith, who's the medical director of the fire department, to come up with a solution, because a lot of times there's a conflict with, is the person staying? Are they going? Is the fire department taking them? Is the police department taking them? No, and so we're having a lot of dialogue. I meet with Chief Penn and Chief Pavlitz every other Monday. We have, call it coffee. A lot of times there's no coffee, it's just conversation. But so having that dialogue and coming up with solutions to these situations. One of the things I ran on are these biometric sensors that I'm going to implement, that have been implemented. We've placed them in the medical unit for now. So it's a pilot program. And so these devices capture movement, oxygen, pulse, and heart rate. And so the devices are, for the moment, only in the medical unit. The devices, it's not just, purchase the device and plug it in and let's go. The environment, the area where the devices are going to be implemented needs to be wired. And because of the nature of the building, it's not easy to just, make a hole in the concrete and just, slide in the wire. So we outfitted the medical infirmary with the wiring and what's needed to get these devices up and running.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
as we're going? So two questions on your first priority, safe and progressive jail focused on rehab. During COVID, what we heard from Sheriff Arthur was there was an issue with a lot of the mental health hospitals being shut down or not as accessible with the pandemic state of emergency. And there seemed to be an issue with individuals being dispositioned to the jail, but really they shouldn't have that, right? People who just needed their medication, as you said, or maybe people who needed a substance abuse facility or maybe some kind of mental health facility, and they were sent to you to manage.
Correct.
Has that improved as the state of emergency has been lifted and the hospitals have reopened?
No. And so if you go onto the county website, click public safety, click sheriff, there's a dashboard. And the reason for the dashboard is I got a lot of questions about the makeup of the jail, who's in the jail. And so the dashboard explains residency, about half of the folks in the detention facility are not even from Arlington. It breaks down gender, age groups, types of charges. And so I'd like the highlighting one thing on there is the mental health. And so how many of the folks, and it ranges, right? So not everyone's SMI, severe mental health, but more often than not, there's more mental health concerns with the folks that are being brought in than before.
Is that designated, self-designated, or is that the arresting officer who's designating SMI?
Right, so we, sometimes it's apparent, and sometimes through the assessment that we use the tool that we use answering the questions, you got the information. I believe when I looked earlier, out of 351, about 230 or 240 identified with some sort of mental health concern. And so, and that raises, that goes to how, what kind of interactions that the staff is going to have. We go to a 6-month law enforcement training academy, and while there's a lot of mental health training and more than when I started in 2001, it's still, you're not a clinician, you're not forensic, it's different. And so we're lucky that we have 14 therapists from the Department of Human Services that work inside the facility to support us. And so I was on the meeting last night with the Marcus Alert Coordinator and the MOST, the Mobile Mental Health Unit van. And so while the community has all these tools that that we're using to address homelessness and often mental health and the community crisis, we have that also in the facility. And I don't know if we quite have the amount that we need. I think we could definitely use more. But we do have 14 therapists that are spread out throughout the facility, and they have different designations of areas of responsibility.
So I was going to ask a related question, and it actually emanated from our conversation with Sheriff Arthur as well. From our perspective, reading newspaper accounts and others, it also seemed like over the last decade, there were way too many deaths in the jail, many of which were associated with probably SMI issues, but I think not completely. You said the transport situation really hasn't gotten much better, but do you think there have been too many deaths over the last decade? And are you doing anything that will alleviate the likelihood of that in the next few years?
That's a loaded question.
It is
a huge question. And so the majority of the deaths that happened in the jail the folks were unhoused when they came in. And so homeless, unhoused, returned inmates. And so that brings its own set of issues. And so, I don't want to go into details, and I'm, out of respect, but depending on how many years have gone, you haven't been to the doctor, haven't been checked. Of course, when you come into the facility, we're going to take care of asking you that, getting an idea. But often we don't get cooperation. I won't know what's going on with Fatima if Fatima doesn't help me. We could draw labs. You could refuse the lab. You could have someone, You know, here I am trying to get some blood to draw blood, and you don't want a needle near you. And so it's a constant struggle to get someone to comply so that you can help them. What about if you don't want the help? And so there's a lot of times that medications are prescribed and the person doesn't want to take them. And so what do you do then? You know, and we don't stop trying, but the person has the right to refuse. They don't want the medication. And I think that you want to get the person in the right state of mind so they can understand why we're asking them to comply, and so they understand, you know, what medications they're taking, that it's their right. They have a right to ask that. And so we do find a lot of times, I don't want to get off topic of your question, but you know, getting the person to comply with if you want to help someone, they need the help. And so it's a struggle in that area. And we petition the court, you know, we reach out to defense attorneys, and so it's a constant communication. You know, we communicate both with the Common Attorney's Office, the courts. We've even petitioned the court when we see someone that needs assistance. You know, do they need a compassionate release? Do they need? We bring things up to the Common Attorney, or we contact the defense attorneys. It's really everyone working together, because there's no human being that's employed by the sheriff's office that takes joy or just is there to see someone suffer. Like, that doesn't happen. Everyone signs up for this job, this profession, because they want to help people.
Do you think that there is a deficiency in the process somewhere? Because you talk about such a high number of people in the facility that have an indicator of SMI, right? And that folks who maybe should be going elsewhere, like a mental hospital or a substance abuse facility, are landing in the jail. Where do you see the problem in the process? Is it arresting officers should be putting them elsewhere? Is there resources that could be invoked earlier before they get to you?
I recently returned, last week I went to the first of its kind behavioral health summit in Williamsburg, Virginia behavioral health summit. And talk about innovative and looking forward. You know, you had judges there from every circuit. You had defense attorneys, commonwealth attorneys, sheriffs, police, mental health workers. And so the conversation was revolved around the sequential intercept model. Intercepts 0 and 1. Super important. I fall under intercept like 2 and 3 and 4, jail reentry. But just today, when I was sitting, was anyone at the concert today? But we were at the concert. There was a gentleman doing karate kicks in the air, severe illness. And the police had to respond. And they engaged the person. I couldn't see because they went over here. But that was in a matter of 15 minutes. And so I'm sitting there with my partner, and of course we're trained and you might know how to interact with that. But the general public is going to be scared of that. That's not normal behavior. And I was worried, and I was like, here we go, you know what I'm saying? But that's our world in the facility. When something, you know, if someone's in front of 7-Eleven, or someone's in front of Giant, and it's not acting right, what do we do? Police interacts. Let's say they're trespassing. Let's say the person, and then there becomes a struggle. And so I think, like I said earlier, the county has implemented the most vehicle, and it runs from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. But even then, the world doesn't stop at 9 p.m. And so who's interacting with these folks? And these are trained individuals that are, you know, there's a clinician and someone from the county that's interacting and trying to get the person help. But what I saw today, this person needed help. And letting the person continue, something's going to happen. It's going to end up bad for someone. And so, going back to your question, there's so much to say, but the sequential intercept model, I think getting folks the assistance, whether it's housing, whether it's substance use disorder counseling, mental health counseling.
Do you think there's adequate training within the county PD, or maybe fire, or where these other first responders might encounter folks in the sequential intercept model that you're talking about? Or is there room?
And respectfully, I'd like to speak on my own agency because I don't want to speak on the police or the fire, but I think we're getting there. But for all of a sudden to have 240 out of 351, and I say all of a sudden, it didn't happen all of a sudden, but it feels like it happened all of a sudden. That's a lot. And so I think we can always benefit from more training. And that was one of the things that we talked about at this Sunday in Williamsburg is what resources, giving folks in their careers an opportunity. So I would say when you're somewhat tenured, you have the skills, to interact with different situations. And so that's something that we're constantly addressing. But when there's staffing shortages, it's difficult. Someone that is tenured and can engage the person based on their experience and training, it just takes time. We're hiring, and I'm lucky at this next session. I think I'm going to have maybe 12 recruits going into the academy in January. But these are 12 people. It's going to take time for them to build that training. And it's like a fire hose. Just because the academy has it on the curriculum, it takes time and we do the CIT training fairly early in the person's career, like right after they graduate from the academy. I believe the police department waits a while for them to have some kind of on the street experience, and then they go through CIT, crisis intervention training. But mental health first aid is a big topic. So these are things that I'm looking at and very, very interested in.
Related to that, two questions, and I'm jumping in on you here.
No,
but,
please.
And please, I invite the other commissioners to do it, so it's a conversation. You talk about the 12 recruits that are going into the academy. When I previewed at the top of our meeting, right, our oversight and collaboration with your office is in the area of human rights, and then it's in the area of of your department's workforce.
Sure.
To what degree are you looking or reflecting on some of those affirmative action plan hiring goals as you're looking at some of these new recruits? And I think, if memory serves, and others, please course correct me, but I think in your office you're having a hard time finding female officers, right?
Well, that's changed.
That's changed.
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, it's great.
Tell us more about it.
We are one of the most diverse agencies in the area. And this wasn't, we have conversations at the department how some agencies will highlight with posters in 2023 or 2021. This even Wanda knows that for years the department has been diverse. And so with these 12 recruits, when I met a few of them, because they stagger when the start dates, we have folks that were in banking for years, or teaching or nursing in like nursing homes, or teaching in preschool. And so people just want to do something different. And it's always like, you're a little worried because it's different. It's a different profession. But people that have that experience and that background, even in banking, you do a lot of customer service, engagement, and if there's any, inside the facility, we don't take firearms in the facility, batons, tasers. We just have our pepper spray and a pair of handcuffs, and really the greatest tool is your words and your communication skills. And so it's always to have folks with different backgrounds coming into the facility, into the profession, I should say. I think it just benefits everyone. Yeah, but we definitely have, I can get you the stats on our female staff, but that's not an issue. And I know there was conversation in corrections for years that, you know, the cliche, like, oh, well, corrections, you're this big and this and that. But it's the way you treat someone and the words you use. And so everyone, not everyone, but folks have sisters, mothers, aunts. And so maybe a female officer will get through to someone a little easier than, you know, and so that's something that we always are mindful of, like who can engage the person. And at the end of the day, we want the person to be calm. We want to help the person.
And on your observation about the timing of CIT training is different on the PD side as compared to the sheriff's office side, are there points of collaboration or best practices sharing between you and your department and PD where you can share those observations and maybe help on some of the dispositioning issues that you're observing?
Yes, so we're lucky that when we do the crisis intervention training, we do it, we blend the classes. And so the police department, the sheriff's office are all engaged in there. And it gives us an opportunity to train together and to, we tease the officers because in the facility, like I said, we don't have all these tools, really just have your words. And so it really puts you in a position where you have to engage the person and be mindful of body language or tone, eye contact, you know, all things that command respect. And you can say a lot without saying a lot, you know. And so it can get you in trouble. And so the staff, I'm very proud of them because the nature of our work, you know, you're in a facility inside a housing unit, there's nowhere to go. And so when you have to interact with someone, it's very real. You know, it's just me and you right there at the moment. And a lot of times the words you use or don't use can make a difference. And so, yeah, collaborating with the office, with the police department, and mostly the police department. I know they collaborate a lot with the fire department, but we, nature of our profession, yeah, law enforcement, we collaborate with the police through our CIT training. And
do you talk about collaboration? Do you have the counterpart with the police department, and do you and that person integrate what should be followed together with the police department? I'm just confused. I'm always confused as to the sheriff department and the police department in Arlington. But do you guys at some point join together to follow the same kind of policies and procedures, or is it separate at all the time?
well, I'll start with the difference. So the police department does patrol. So they patrol the community. And so if there's a car accident, if you call 911, the call center will dispatch a police officer. That's their function. And so Chief Penn, the police chief, he's appointed by the county manager. So Chief Penn reports to Mark Schwartz. And so my charge in the sheriff's primary function is running the detention facility and protecting the court, so providing security to the courthouse, to the judges, and then the serve civil process, any documents that come from the court. But we are law enforcement certified, so we are able to assist when this vehicle went into Ireland's Four Courts. It was a Friday evening, I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, police, they're short-staffed, and so they responded to the vehicle in the restaurant. And so my staff took calls for service. It was all the warrant deputies. So the deputies that serve civil process, they already had vehicles, they were already in the office, so they ended up taking calls for service to support the police department. So we do collaborate and work together. We just helped them with the Marine Corps Marathon, which is like a huge lift in the area, a big event. And so
My concern has always been that the police department does something different than the sheriff department, and they treat people who are committing some type of crime differently, who are not trained properly to deal with minorities or people with mental health care. So my concern has always been, are these officers and people being trained to do the correct outreach when they're engaging with the community who are committing some type of fault?
right, yeah, and I would be, like I said, respectfully, I wouldn't want to talk about the police because they have their own policies and their own procedures, and so which are separate from ours. But we do attend the academy, the same academy. I'll say once we graduate the 6-month academy, we go through field training, and so the police department has their field training. We have ours. The bulk of my staff, when they graduate from the Northern Virginia Criminal Justice Academy, they are assigned to the detention facility. And so that's what I did. Once you graduate, you're assigned to the jail. And so you work in the jail, and depending on different promotions and advancements and movements, you can and that's really one of my struggles, not to get off topic, but it's hard to retain when the bulk of my responsibility is the detention facility. And so my staff are human beings. And so human beings, we all can only take so much. And so it's a very stressful environment. And so if I know I can make more money or maybe even less, but I can be on the street in a patrol car, and I'm not saying it's not dangerous, it's extremely dangerous, but my staff is inside a facility for 12 and a half hours. They work 12 and a half hour shifts. I just came from there. We're having our holiday pre-Thanksgiving meal tonight, so I was working over here.
Thank you.
But yeah, but it's tough. And so I don't know if you were going to ask me about staffing, but the Metropolitan Police Department offers, I believe it's a $25,000 bonus, $25,000 bonus. And so it's a conversation that I have with the county board and Mr. Schwartz about we have to be competitive. And it's hard in this area. One of the things you'll find in this small area is the number of police departments. I mean, I named like 8 earlier, and that's just, so there's so many, and everyone's vying and trying to recruit the same talent pool. And so what I'm interested in is recruiting local folks from the community. And so that's why getting into my second initiative, community engagement, to your point, a lot of folks don't even know there's a sheriff's office. And that's like, that hurts us, you know. I don't want for being a veteran of 30 years, you're in this profession because you want to make a difference. And so when folks say, oh, there's a sheriff's office, it's like, wow. And so what I did early on when I was appointed sheriff is I assigned one of my deputy sheriffs to the community. And graciously, the police department has a community engagement division. And so Chief Penn was gracious enough to allow one of my deputies to join. And so she literally sits with them in this building. She's a part of the team. They're great. They've embraced her. And so when the police department is out doing their community outreach, by the nature of the work, the police department is in the community, right? That's their work. That's their job, to patrol the community. Ours is inside the jail or in the courthouse or serving civil process. So of course, when they see the sheriff, they're like, it's not for a good reason. And so I want to build those relationships. And so Deputy Ferris is an Air Force veteran. She's bilingual. She's assigned to the Green Valley neighborhood. She does tutoring. She does reading at Arlington Park. She's engaged with the Latino liaison officer. She often will back him up if he's out of town or on vacation. So it's a big difference. And the community has mentioned it to me when I'm out and about. They're like, oh, Deputy Ferris, and thank you for bringing her out. And so a lot of times when I go to an event, I'm trying to talk to her. She's busy engaging the children. They're playing soccer or playing basketball or building those relationships. How will someone be attracted to or want to apply for the sheriff's office if they don't even know that we're here? And so I believe there's a lot of talent in the community, and folks need jobs, and so that's a good opportunity.
Can you talk a little bit more about the burnout point that you were raising, and that we're having a hard time with retention? What would you say is sort of the number of years in service in the sheriff's office after which people start leaving? Like, are you seeing a pattern there?
We are, and so I said earlier that one, we go to the law enforcement academy. And so when these folks graduate, they have a law enforcement certificate. which is very, very attractive to other agencies in the area. Now I can grab Jose, and Jose's ready to go, and offer him a little bit of money. And so I believe that, as the leader, you have to show the staff constantly why they should stay and why this is a great place to be and work. And so to your point there, recently, last week, we just redid our roll call room, which is where staff report when they first report to work, the jail staff. And so it hadn't been refreshed, and I've been here 22 years and it looks the same. And so it was overdue. And, as many, with all due respect, this building goes through so many changes and it's beautiful, but we need the same. I mean, just a fresh coat of paint, and we got new floors, new chairs. It's like everybody's in Disneyland right now. And it's important. It speaks to retention, little things like that. It shows the staff that we appreciate them and care about them.
Right.
I want to sit in comfortable chairs too. I shouldn't have to come to Bosman to sit in a comfortable chair. And so it goes a long way, and I'm not knocking Bosman, but it shows them how much we appreciate them. And I was very thankful. Mr. Schwartz provided some funding for a refresh in the roll call room, and we're going to refresh our staff dining. And we created a relaxation room, which is a space where staff can take a load off. We have some recliners, but it's difficult because we're short-staffed. And so while all that sounds great, we need staff to be able to, it's implemented, but it's not where it should be.
Do you think the compensation structure is off?
Absolutely.
I mean, you talk about this NWA 25K signing bonus.
Yes.
Are
And
we-
compression is another issue.
Yeah.
And so, if I started 2019 and there were no increases, and then Jose starts in 2023, I might be making more than Fatima, and she's been here 5 years. And how does that make her feel? And so she's been here 5 years, invested her life. I just talked to a staff member. I share this because you all want to hear what I'm going through. I'm sharing with you. I had a staff member, great person. But the person, I said, how's it going? He says, compression. He says, I've had to move 5 times in 5 years because every time the rent goes up, you can't afford it. That's not fair. That's not fair. This person is providing, a service to our community, putting their life on the line. And every time the rent goes up, they have to move. And that person has young children. And that's not fair. Like that night, I feel so guilty, but I can't do this on my own. I need the community and the board and everyone to help me out. I just told them tonight, be proud, because when the community's on vacation, at home sleeping, or enjoying your favorite Netflix show, there's staff in that building, ensuring that the people that are on our charge are safe.
But who sets the compensation? Are employees from the sheriff's office on a different pay scale than police officers under the county manager?
Yes.
Who sets that pay scale? Is that you?
No, the county sets the pay scale. And so that's another, thank you for bringing that up. We don't get paid. My starting salary for a deputy sheriff is $62,000 a year. The police department is 68. So the police department is 68.
And the average income of Arlington is 120,000.
So my staff live in Spotsylvania, Stafford,
Of course.
Waldorf, La Plata. So 12.5-hour shift, and then you have an hour and change on the front end and then on the back end. So that's not fair. And so, we could make this place, we could refresh the whole, but people need to live. They need to buy groceries, pay bills, live life. And then it's a tough job. And then we're going back to the beginning with the 241 folks with mental health. And it's not the jail from the 80s, the 90s, 2000s. It's a different population.
So about how many positions do you think you lose a year for people going someplace else? Because 62,000 in this area is small. I mean, there are clerical positions that are.
What about benefits? I mean, I would imagine the benefits might, compensate for the.
Yeah, I mean, the benefits are attractive, but you're talking to folks that are living now. you know, the medical benefits are important.
Yeah.
But you know, I knew when I started and I was in my 20s, didn't really think about that
Yeah.
until now. But yeah, I think we need to dedicate to the people that protect us. And
So I don't think that 68 is enough for the police department, 62 here,
No
but is
way.
there always, for the counties that have both, like Fairfax has a police force and a sheriff, is there always a disparity between the police and the sheriff, or is it just in Arlington?
there is, because I have a stats and I can share it with you all that we did a couple months ago, because we were trying to compare every agency within like 30 miles, not even maybe 15, 20 miles, and see what are they offering? Because that's who we're competing against. You know, we're competing against all these departments that are nearby. And so we often find when we're doing, you know, the applications, the backgrounds, you'll see I've applied to Alexandria Sheriff, Fairfax Sheriff. You know, and so it's very competitive.
And I can see why keeping morale high in the office, you know, just these small changes that you mentioned, you know, don't cost a lot of money, but do make the difference in terms of the quality of life of people at work.
Sure. It's important. It goes a long way, but at the end of the day, that paycheck, you know, people are counting on that paycheck, just with gas. And
Everything going up.
thing.
Yeah.
I do have a question. I know you're stating that the reason why people are leaving is basically for higher pay or the opportunity to be on the road, work in the community. Are you aware of an anonymous survey that was conducted by your staff, giving reasons why people are dissatisfied with the sheriff's office?
Yes, I met with the staff, and
So you're aware that that survey mentions pay, but the overarching thing was management, leadership, and how they felt they were treated by the supervisor.
right. And so we addressed, we had some staff, and this started when Sheriff Arthur was here, but we had staff that had kind of taken it upon themselves.
Survey was August this year.
Right. We had staff that had engaged in these conversations with Sheriff Arthur. And so it was brought back up when I became sheriff. And so we met with the staff. I met with them in my conference room. And I said to them, I'm not here to give you a million explanations or solutions. I need to listen to you first to understand what the issues are. And they did a great job. Sorry, I'm speaking back there. They did a great job explaining. They had done the work, which shows a lot. You know, if you do the work, that means you care. And these staff are fairly tenured, I would say, 10-year veterans. And they had statistics and they had issues that they brought. And so we listened to them. And they had, like Wanda mentioned, they had done a survey. And so implementing these changes, you know, it's not going to happen overnight. But if I don't know, then how would I be able to, you know, change these things? And so that was your question.
Okay. Can I just make a comment on something that you mentioned earlier about it's 7 or 8 different agencies that bring people to the jail. Some of the residents in the jail, they don't cooperate. You can't force them to do certain things, but as the sheriff, you are the keeper of the jail and you're responsible of those in your care. And while some people may not cooperate, as you're aware, there was a $1.3 million lawsuit that was settled, because it was mentioned earlier about the deaths in the jail. So there was a lawsuit that was settled. As you're aware, there was another incident in terms of one of the deaths where there was failure to follow policies that resulted in one of the suicides. So it's not strictly just because the police are bringing people in, their underlying conditions. There are other factors that have caused deaths in the jail, which I said one was resulted in a $1 million settled lawsuit. So I just wanted to point that out. It's not just people are coming in with underlying conditions, not cooperating, because it sounded like it was victim blaming when we know that there are other factors as well.
Right, no, it's not victim blaming. At the end of the day, I'm the sheriff. And so if something happens, I'm responsible. It's on my watch. And so looking back at why something happened and who was involved and what can we change, and we address all of those things. People have been let go. People have been disciplined. People have been, but I can't get into all that, and I'm not going to get into all that.
Yeah,
It's part, go ahead, Darrell.
Sheriff, we had in 2022, we had at one meeting, we had the president of the NAACP to come and speak. And then at the next meeting, we had Sheriff Arthur to come and speak. And I have to say this to Sheriff Arthur, because I have been involved pretty much in commissions for about 20 years. And in every instance in which we asked the sheriff's office to come and speak, they have come before every agency, I mean, every commission that I've been involved with, and they have availed themselves. And thank you for keeping that tradition, because I think that's very, very important, because in some instances they didn't have to come, but the sheriff did come before us. At the meeting that we had with Sheriff Arthur, she said that she had commissioned the Justice Department to look at the sheriff's office, and specifically to look at some of the things which have pretty much happened there. And she said that she was expecting the report in something like September, and that the report was going to be made public, and that she was going to implement whatever was the recommendations of the Department of Justice, whatever was that division. And my question is, did that division ever issue such a report? Did she get the report? Did she implement what was in it? And is it going to be made available to the public?
And it was September of 22 that she was talking about.
Right. That's what, yeah, last year.
Right. I was on that meeting with you.
Oh, that's right, you were.
So it was the National Institute of Corrections.
Okay.
And they did come in. We had two folks come in, medical expert, Dr. Her, H.E. Barbar, Ray Her, and Dr. Margaret Severson. She was the psychiatric piece. And so they came in, it was in November they came in, and they did issue a report, and they did issue recommendations. And those recommendations were obviously received by the sheriff's office. And so I believe we had this conversation earlier this year, but yeah, they were never published or never shared, which is, again.
But they were implemented.
Correct. So we have, what we did was, it was a report, and I'm not sure if we did a summary, an executive summary, because the report was like 39 pages long. And so I can't remember if we provided that executive summary to the county board. And then what we did was we dissected the report and created a flow chart so that we could kind of keep track, because it was hard to flip through there. But some of the things that came out of that were the amount of mental health, substance use disorder, and mental health folks that were dependent on medications. They were coming in off the street on opioids and substance use disorder. And so that was in November of last year. And since then, we've had our MAP program, medication assisted treatment program, up and running. And we've also implemented so we have the MAP program, and then one of the things that I've asked the county board for is my own doctor to assist me. And so what I've done, I was in the position, I believe when we had that meeting with you all last fall, I was the captain overseeing the contracts. And so that's what we currently have. We have a captain that oversees our medical contract, and our food services contract. And then we have our medical vendor. And so what I've asked the board is to give me someone with medical expertise that can provide, the sheriff with some guidance that's separate from the medical vendor. Because I'm not a doctor and one of my staff is. And we actually had this conversation because we were seeing a lot of uptick in our booking and processing with the arrestees coming in and having to contact Dr. Reed Smith from the fire department and engaging in conversation of, is the person fit to come in? And then, are they gonna go to the hospital? And so when we had that conversation, I discussed with the board that it would be extremely helpful to have someone with a medical background providing me with guidance. There's sheriffs that have attorneys on staff, and really this is, like I said, progressive, innovative. The future is,
Did you get hiring approval for that doctor on staff?
It's pending. I believe it's on the agenda for the board.
Going back to those issues that William brought, when it comes to policy implementing in leadership or satisfaction or salaries, that's not on your office. It's the human resources, Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm totally distorted. That all those decisions and policy have to be approved by the board before your office even decides anything, correct?
Right.
So it's not you who's not following changes, it's the board not helping for us to evolve.
Correct. And they do avail themselves to listen, but I'll say this, the police department has collective bargaining and they have their unions. And so that's not available under the Constitution of the statute for the sheriff's office. It's not, it's part of the, so unless the sheriff is not able to have collective bargaining under the umbrella of the sheriff. There's 123 sheriffs in Virginia.
Is that because of the law doesn't allow the sheriff's office?
It's in the Constitution as part under the yes.
Interesting.
But why did they, I'm just curious, if to the extent that why was that separation made? Is there any reason that?
I'm not sure, but I know at least here in Arlington, a lot of my positions are funded from the county. And so there's sheriffs like in rural areas where the sheriff's office, every position is under the state, right? The sheriff gets the power from the state, the elected official, constitutional officer. And so with the police being able to do, there's a lot of collective bargaining. I'm not trying to get into their business. That's the police department. I'm not in the police department. But, then it seems to staff that the sheriff isn't fighting for them when I am.
Well, I have a concern that maybe the human resources not helping you properly to have a better department, and we're focusing on the wrong things. And leadership and all problems with the department come under human resources. No?
Yeah, I honestly can't speak to that because I think constitutional officers, some of your employees, are county employees and then some
Right,
are-
but everything goes, every decision I make with salary and goes through Marcy, goes through HR, county HR. And so that may not necessarily be the case in other areas of the state, but here in Arlington, because the county funds certain positions. I've had an opportunity to hire a few retired folks that have retired. And just to get their numbers right and all that, that has to go to the county. And so you make a very valid point.
Thank you.
So Sheriff, thank you so much for your time
Thank you.
this evening and for your, please, yes.
I'm sorry, the NAACP branch had spoke with you, the Criminal Justice Committee, and they spoke about a civilian advisory board and a proposal.
Mr. McCraven, I think, Peter.
Right, was submitted to you, and
I never received it.
never,
Did it go directly to me?
yes,
I never received it.
I have a copy here for you, what the email was about.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, when I met with the NAACP Criminal Justice Subcommittee, I think it's Peter Craven. he mentioned, when I was canvassing and I knocked on his door, we had a long conversation, and he mentioned Citizens Advisory Board for the Office of Sheriff. And it's a great idea. And so a good friend, Sean Casey, the sheriff of Alexandria, is a good friend of mine, and he has one, and he loves it. And so I've been working with Sean to help me understand how that works. And it sounds like it's a win-win. Whoever's on board to assist a leader, especially in this profession, I mean, why would you not take that assistance? But everybody has to be on board to move forward and to help the situation. There's enough that's working. There's enough working against me just with the nature of the work. And every day we come in and give it all we've got. So I thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the time you gave me. Thank you.
Thank
you
you
for
for
coming.
being here. Thank you so much, Sheriff.
Oh, and I just want to say, if anyone wants to do a tour of the sheriff's office, because in the past, we've done that.
Absolutely.
I highly encourage any member of the commission who hasn't done such a tour to sign up and do it, because you really do learn an awful lot about the facility itself with the tours. So.
And I think it was, you guys weren't doing it during COVID.
Correct.
Are you doing it again now?
We are as of now. You know, we still want to be careful and be cautious. So there's certain areas that we just want to be careful.
Yeah.
As well. There's an outbreak.
We might circle back to you in Q1 to see if we can arrange
Sure.
an opportunity for commissioners who haven't had an opportunity to do it with you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I know I've given tours as sheriff to the COB, me, and her assistant. So they've come, and a couple other folks. Yeah. I've given a tour to every county board member because I wanted them to go through the facility with Jose.
Where do we register to do that or sign up?
Or you can contact me.
Okay, just
Yeah.
going, okay.
And we, if it's commission level, we'll come through one of us and maybe see if we can arrange something for a broader group, so you don't have to do one of us.
Sure.
Thanks so much for coming tonight.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much. Appreciate your time. Okay, well, we have a quorum in the room, so we'll officially call the meeting to order. Stefan, thank you for taking the pen on the October minutes. You all would have received that about a week ago. Has everybody had a chance to review? Any edits or comments? I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move for approval of the minutes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes approved unanimously. We have kind of a jam-packed agenda today. So I'll quickly sort of jump into some of the updates here. There are quite a few items we have to work through. The first is an update on the status of our proposed revisions to the ordinance. And thank you to all. I know that there are a lot of moving parts behind the scenes that a lot of people are doing. Stephen and I have had a couple of, well, let me say it this way. I have had a conversation with Christian Dorsey about 3 weeks ago, asking about the status of the ordinance, our first markup of the ordinance where we were just adding schools within the purview. He doesn't have an answer on it yet, but did indicate that there is some degree of pushback on it. And it was that the pushback fell into two categories. One, there was a question posed as to whether other jurisdictions really are incorporating public schools under the purview of their respective ordinances. And then two, Christian sort of previewed a concern that including Arlington County Public Schools in our ordinance and modifying it as such could have an impact on collective bargaining and could, sort of be tantamount to a change in process for how the teachers or other staff members of school bring their concerns for discrimination. Now, While I see that point as it relates to the inclusion of the county workforce within the scope of the ordinance, our first markup didn't get to that. That's coming in our second markup. So I didn't quite, and Roland, I know you have some thoughts on this. I'll give you the floor in a second. But those were sort of the two initial areas of resistance and reluctance that Christian identified when I spoke to him about 2.5 weeks ago. As a follow-up from that call, Stephen did some research and compiled information from other municipalities and their ordinances that had their public schools encompassed in the scope of their ordinances. We compiled that and sent it along to Christian. I think I did that over this past weekend. Have not yet heard back, but we're working that channel to try to arm him with data to show him that this is not, one, there's no Dillon rule issue here, and two, we wouldn't be unique or the first jurisdiction to do it. As a separate work stream, I know Carol isn't here, but Roland, it sounds like you may have had discussions with Carol on some of this. I'll give a quick overview and then I'll kick it over to you in a second. I know that Carol, as she promised she would, had some conversations when she went to the Virginia Human Rights Convention. And she sort of, I'm reading from her email, she gathered that not all other jurisdictions have the same enforcement ability that we do, but she noted that Alexandria is one of the jurisdictions like us that does. And she is meeting with Tanya, who, Gurjeet, you might be able to share Tanya's full title. I think she's like
She's interim.
Board member.
Yeah.
Right, so Carol took the action to talk with Tanya a little bit about what the resistance is, and Tanya also shared to Carol this concern about collective bargaining and how it could potentially be impacted or invoked if the board were to approve the modification to the ordinance that we had suggested. Carol also took the action item to engage with the our counterparts in Alexandria to get a better understanding of how they are operating with schools being within their purview. And I'm hopeful that at our December meeting, Carol will report back on what her findings are. Now, Roland, on the CBA and the collective bargaining piece, I know that there was an email exchange maybe between you and Carol.
Yeah,
it's just thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's just that I've had experience in my previous job dealing with collective bargaining agreements that had a provision dealing with EEO simply because in my job, I had the collateral duty of being the EEO director for the agency. And at the same time, the clerical force there at the agency was unionized. So we had instances, and in the collective bargaining agreement, and this may be typical, and you may know a little bit more about this than I do. It's typical in a lot of agreements, especially agreements dealing with public sector, that there is a provision for EEO.
Like
So,
grievance process.
right, and as part of the grievance process. So what will be happening in Arlington is something that's not new, pretty much is happening in all of the federal government. The key is that in the collective bargaining agreement, the employee doesn't have two bites of the apple. The employee they can either go the regular EEO process, which would be going through the Office of EEO, in my instance, me as EEO director, or they would go through the grievance process, and there's a specific EEO process in the grievance process. They cannot do both.
Right.
They do one or the other. So I think that's how Arlington would be dealing with that, because that's how pretty much the federal government pretty much deals with that. But that's not anything new,
Right.
pretty much to this area.
Right. I mean, I think putting a really fine point on the issue.
Yeah.
Right. And Stephen, please do weigh in here. Okay. And Wanda, for your purposes, just to kind of orient you as to, we're talking deep in the weeds on a broader issue, but we have proposed as our body that we would modify the human rights ordinance under which we work.
I watched the last October meeting, so I got a lot of information.
Awesome.
Regarding that, changing some of the language.
You got it. And we're doing it in 2 tranches. So we've submitted proposal number 1, which the only modification we're asking for is that Arlington Public Schools be covered jurisdictionally in the scope of our ordinance. proposal number 2 will also include a recommendation that Arlington County workforce, right, so somebody who works for the county or the sheriff's office or whomever, has the right to enforce their rights under our ordinance. But we're not up to that. That's latter one. What I think, Stephen, that you and I have talked about is, I don't think that the resistance on CBA grounds is necessarily wrong when it comes to proposal number 2. Because if there are people who are negotiating a collective bargaining agreement inclusive of that grievance process, we're now saying here's another thing that you can do alongside of the grievance process and pick your poison, you only get one, right? You don't get 2 bites at the apple. That would be something that is new and that potentially implicates the CBA, but not for the first one, because the first one is just providing resources for students, which is what Stephen's piece that went out to Christian Dorsey had to say. So I don't think that we're going to totally avoid the CBA issue when it comes to proposal number 2. I don't see how it ties to proposal number 1. Do you have anything else to add on that?
I don't know what the CBA says for the workforce folks, but I definitely agree with it. I don't see how it applies to all.
Yeah.
I don't think, we don't know what the collective bargaining agreement says because we don't have it.
That's part of the problem.
Is it a public document? I would assume
I
it
think it's being
is.
negotiated now,
So. Okay.
so I don't know that it would be available yet.
And also collective bargaining agreements, as you know, are always subject to change anyway. So they can change it during the course of the collective bargaining agreement. And also the problem that one has is a lot of that is going to be subject to interpretation pretty much of the agreement, which, you know, could lead to arbitration as to whether or not provisions and stuff are applicable. So it's really pretty much up to an end. And the question is, do we allow that to govern the recommendation and just recommend something to the board and let them deal with it?
Yeah, or
Context.
put something in proposal number 2, so not just schools, but the later one, which, you know, frankly, at this point, they may coalesce, right? Because we haven't gotten proposal number 1 through, so we might just like push it all up.
Yeah.
But maybe it's finding an elegant way in the recommendation to say something like nothing herein is intended to restrict a person's rights that may exist under any applicable collective bargaining agreement, right? So if that's what the resistance is, we get around it in the draft. But I think that's something that the drafting committee can explore in our next meeting. So,
And also, would the collective bargaining agreement apply to all employees?
no,
So then you could still have something like that for an employee, because Virginia is a right to work stay. So you
right, but
can't
it wouldn't apply
really,
to managers.
Yeah.
There's a
So
whole
it-
basket of employees for whom
Yeah.
they may still avail themselves of our ordinance. So that's why it would be very specific to any
Yeah,
applicable
you have to.
CBA,
Yeah.
right? So
So
that
I'm
might
a
be.
little forgetful that the recommendation we sent out only applies to students, doesn't apply to employees or parents or.
So we define, the definition of schools in the original ordinance was limited to private schools. So our markup said public or private schools.
Right.
So there is a prohibition on discrimination in education or in employment. But right now, if you are a county employee, you are not a covered person. So that's
Because
coming
it's a
in number
public
2, right? So really effectively, proposal number 1 is just extending protection on the education side to students. But once we get to proposal number 2, it will encompass teachers.
By including public schools as opposed to just private, why is that a student issue as opposed to an employee issue also?
Because the Arlington County workforce is excluded from the scope of people who are covered and who can bring claims here under the current version of the ordinance. So what we're doing is we're saying that should be broadened too,
Okay.
so that if you're a county employee. So today, a teacher could not bring a claim under our ordinance. Modification number 2, they could. And modification number 1, students could on the basis of discrimination. in
So
education.
one of the interests we had was trying to get proposal number 1 approved by the board by the end of the year while Christian is still there.
Correct.
It seems unlikely that that's going to happen.
I don't know. The email that went across this weekend, we implored movement on this before the end of the year, before the end of his term, and I haven't heard back from him.
So I had a conversation with him maybe a week ago, I don't know where that fit with your conversations. He seemed dubious because of the pushback that it was likely to happen. And it might just gel with our second proposal anyway for some time
Yeah,
early next year.
I'm afraid of that, but I'm not gonna be Pollyanna about it, but we'll try. We'll see what happens on the email response.
And they're still in negotiations, that's, because they don't have a final contract. So that's all pretty much up in the air.
So that's where we are in the ordinance, progress, but slow progress, but discussions are ongoing. And we'll look to Carol in December for any updates she has on her outreach with Alexandria. Quick update on our HRC composition. As we know, Chris has resigned from the commission and Whitney's term ended, and Sean sent us a note today as he's sort of rounding into the final semester of law school. He doesn't have enough bandwidth to continue doing the work, so he tendered his resignation as well, which means we have vacancies on the commission, and I'm going to take this out of turn for a moment. Wanda, it's wonderful that you're here. We're so thrilled that you're here. If you want to take a moment at this juncture of our meeting where we're talking about composition of the commission, and tell us a little bit about what interests you in the commission and what you'd like to do and what your priorities are, what your background is. We'd love to hear it as we think about filling seats.
Okay, sure. I'm Wanda Younger. I started working at the Arlington Sheriff's Office at age 16, and that was my entire career with the Sheriff's Office here in Arlington. I retired in 2020, right at the onset of COVID, with over 30 years of service. I started, like I said, at 16 as a summer intern, and then a part-time, it's called secretary back then, and then I decided to attend the academy and become a deputy sheriff, and then I moved through the ranks to sergeant to lieutenant to director of pretrial services, and resigned or retired in 2020. Since retiring from the Arlington Sheriff's Office, I've been volunteering full-time with Arlington NAACP as an elected official. I'm a secretary, and I'm in my second term, and I just enjoy helping and giving back, volunteer work, advocating for people's rights. That's what we do at NAACP. As the secretary, I'm an ex officio member of all the committees. So I'm a member of the Education Committee, the Political Action Committee, the Criminal Justice Committee, Housing Committee. So I'm very involved with the issues that are within Arlington County. I'm excited to be here. I would like to be a part of the team. I have a lot of insight within the community, within the sheriff's office. I'm available for meetings. I'm retired, so there are no restrictions to hold me back. And I live in Arlington, Douglas Park. My total years living in Arlington is about 30 years. I went to elementary school in Arlington. My mom was a single parent. We moved to Alexandria, came back to Arlington. I lived in Prince William and back here in Arlington again, but it encompasses about 30 years of living here. I live with my husband, who's retired from the Arlington Police Department. He was a deputy chief of police here in Arlington. He's also an attorney. I have 2 sons. I have 3 grandchildren. My youngest grandchildren just recently celebrated his 6th birthday. He does have a disability, spina bifida. He's a huge warrior. He was diagnosed with not being able to walk when he was born, and it's just a blessing that he's walking, with assistance at times, but it's just a blessing. And I'm just here to help in any way that I can and advocate for fairness and equality. And I'm not afraid to speak up when necessary. I would love to contribute in any way that I can.
We're so thrilled you're here, Wanda. What a cool story of your, from 16, starting out in the sheriff's office. That is a long career there.
Very long
Congrats on
career.
your
Yes.
and your grandson's birthday and all of the things. And so thank you for being here. We're delighted to meet you, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with you.
So how many vacancies, you mentioned the 3 people who we knew, but how many vacancies on the commission are there?
I think there are quite a few, Gurjit.
There are 4.
There are 4.
With Sean, there were
Sean,
9.
Mindy, Chris.
Take away Sean, that's 8 present
And the
members.
total is
And the
supposed to be.
statute is 12, so we're 4 short. Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't mean 4 short. We have 4 vacancies.
And we have a lot of work to do. And, you know, especially as it becomes more challenging. And one other update, and then Fatima, I'll kick it over to you to maybe talk a bit about the poll. My term as chair is going to end at the end of December. And sort of TBD on who will come in behind me. But it's really been such a pleasure to get to do this and to work with all of you guys. So all of that to say, changes afoot, right, in our commission. And we've got the quorum challenge that we have been talking about for some time. I know we tabled the discussion at our last meeting as to how many meetings do we want to have.
But quorum is not on 12, but on the number of, a majority of the people who are on the commission.
I believe that's right.
So 5, basically.
The quorum is set by statute. The statute says 5.
It says a majority of the people on the
No,
commission.
the statute specifically says 5 members make a quorum, but a majority of those present can make decisions.
So we've been looking for too big of a quorum when we had more people, I thought.
But we have had challenges even getting
Sure.
that number in the room repeatedly, which is why we've had to cancel as many meetings as we have. So all of that to say, changes afoot. We've had some vacancies. We're going to be filling new seats, but we continue to have our quorum challenges. Fatima, thank you very much for taking the action of submitting the poll. I wonder if you can share with us a little bit about what you have gotten.
Sure, happy to. Well, I don't know how much I really have to report because we got, I'm looking at 4 responses that were actually recorded on the poll itself. I think Stefan and Carol had issues accessing the poll. And I believe Stefan's response was that, you know, any one of the options worked for him. But what I have here, and I don't think Carol was able to access it. I'll have to go back to her email to see if, you know, what her response was. But what I have here is that, first let me explain how I set up the poll. Because I didn't have the option of, you know, changing the entries to match the options that we wanted people to choose among, I had to use other dates as proxies. And I made it very clear exactly how that was set up. As an example, on November 15th, okay, so we wanted to decide, the decision was whether or not we wanted to keep the meeting date on Thursday as we have it now, or whether we wanted to possibly, you know, try meeting on Monday instead. And the response was, as I see it here, 3-2 in favor of keeping it on Thursday. So there's dates here. This poll is set up for meetings on specific dates and specific times.
So we used it as a straw man for, so it sounds like Thursdays.
Exactly.
Thursday.
Exactly.
What about number of meetings?
So similarly, I set up the straw man to work the same way, and the 14th and the 15th. Let me just make sure I got this right. I'll go back to the email itself. Yeah. Well, I remembered exactly what the issue was. Basically, just open this again. So Thursday, yeah, so Thursday works in terms of the day. In terms of the frequency, monthly 1 out over quarterly. We have 3.
But was there any opportunity for people to propose something other than monthly or quarterly?
Not on the poll, you know, directly.
So of the 5 responses, how many people said they wanted quarterly? How many people said that they wanted monthly?
So the quarterly was, we had 1 response for quarterly and 3 responses for monthly. So just keep it the same way that we have it now. And, you know, it looks like people want to keep it the way we, you know, in terms of both the frequency and the day. So they want, you know, Thursday had the most votes, 3 instead of 2 for Monday.
Okay, well, thank you.
And, you know, Stefan said that any day would work for him. So, you know, that being the case, you know, it's 3 to 2, or in this case, 4 to 3. You know,
Yeah,
we
so I
add-
think we can
if
see the
add
prevalence
your
there.
vote for all of them. Sorry.
I think we can see the prevalence there, but thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and I also gave people the option to select more than one. You know, if both dates worked, that was fine too. So that's.
So can I ask another quorum issue? Is there anything, so the statute says you need 5 people for a quorum.
Right.
You need a quorum for a business meeting. Do you actually need quorum for a meeting? Like, say we only had 4 people here to have a discussion.
This is the
Sure.
perfect tee up to what I was just going to ask Gurjeet to go to next, because to your question, what we did since the last meeting was have a couple conversations with county attorney's office, because that was an issue that came up last month. So let's say we don't have a quorum, can we at least have a discussion?
Right, you can't approve the minutes, but.
Exactly, and can we sort of basket our business to a later point in time? Because I think we heard a lot of conflicting things or conflicting views, and Gurjeet, maybe you can sort of walk us through what county attorney gave as the answer to that question.
Sure. So if you have a properly scheduled notice meeting, and it's hybrid like this, if you don't have a quorum, you can still meet. So if you don't have 5 commissioners that are present, that's the quorum, you can still meet, but you can have no virtual participation and you can't vote. So for example, if 4 people showed up today and you had 6 online, Helen, you would have to kick those 6 out. And then you guys could proceed. If Sheriff was here, you could listen to him. You couldn't vote on anything.
So understand the voting thing. Did they give you a rationale on why you need to kick somebody out? Or is that actually in regulation or?
Yeah, and we can get you that information, but I think it's in the, whatever was passed during.
The state thing?
Yeah, the state, yeah, this is pursuant to an actual regulation or law. And I think in your electronic meetings, policy, it has to be consistent with that. And then beyond that, if you're thinking, you already know that you can have, I think, up to 25% of your meetings, which you already do virtual, but they can't be consecutive. And then beyond that, if it's just, you know, members just wanting to talk about something in a meeting virtually, whatever, that's an unofficial meeting, you can't have that.
So can you have a meeting that is publicized, right? And something that's publicized for an online virtual gathering without a quorum that's separate and apart from the 3 that we're allowed to have each year? That's spread out in that's explicit in the state law as well?
That's the interpretation of it, yes. I mean, this is nothing new, by the way. This is the same information that we shared when this first came out. It can be very confusing, and we went through iterations of it, but yeah.
I guess I'm asking something different. I understand you can have 3 virtual meetings, 9 in person or whatever it is. You need a quorum in either case to have business.
Yeah.
You can't schedule a separate, say a 13th meeting online that you may only have 4 people and just have a discussion if it's publicized. So
From what CEO is telling us, no.
Even if, like, for example, we need to have a special meeting, something, you know, some issue arises
At the
where.
committee level, for example.
Yeah, and it's necessary for us to meet. You know.
All
It's
virtual?
unplanned,
Right.
you know, we just.
Or
it's
we have
important.
3 days so we can put it on the website and say,
Yeah, so if
extra
you,
meeting. It just,
Is it a matter of the number of days of notice that we have to give? Is
no,
it-
I mean, you could do a 13th meeting and you could properly notice a 13th meeting, but you can't do it all virtually. Again, the rule is, right, you can't do more than 25% of, well, whatever 25% is. So let's say this year you decide, you change next year, you want to do 20 meetings. You go
Right.
from 12 to 20. 25% of 20 is 5. So you can only have 5 all virtual properly noticed, like the other one meetings, where you can conduct business or not, right? But that's the all virtual. You can't have
Okay,
a 6th.
so it's the virtual part that's the issue, not the fact that we, if there's a special issue that comes up that we can't meet at all. We can, but it cannot be virtual.
Yes, and it has to be properly noticed with the advance time. So provided that's done.
Okay, how
right.
much is the advance time?
72 hours?
Okay.
Yeah.
But the fact is that we only have 11 meetings throughout the year. So we have to all base it on those 11 meetings to follow the rule, because we have 1 month off.
Right, and again, I mean, look, we're all here, and I'm grateful that everybody is here, but the reality is there have been quorum challenges, okay?
Right.
And I'm not gonna be in this seat after, the first of the year, so, I'm trying to be mindful and tee it up and position it for success, but what I'm seeing as a pattern is we're not actually able to do those 11 meetings, and so this is an opportunity to be like, do we wanna be really impactful and meaningful about what we're doing and make it attainable for people?
And I think the one other thing, just keep in mind, as you guys are talking about this, is you guys all know that, emails can constitute meetings.
Right.
So just be mindful of that.
That's all.
You guys start
Yeah.
talking
Within
about
3
things.
within 3 hours or 3
I mean-
people or?
At the end of the day, we can maintain the status quo, but I just want everybody to realize that as I don't have the bandwidth to be in this role as much as I want to, and I will remain on the commission and support it, but I'm not going to be an anchor here. I'm not going to be able to be here every month or 11 months out of the year. And so I just encourage everybody, well, let's maintain the status quo, but think about it, right? If you don't think that we're going to be able to be here consistently and meet quorum 11 times, think about reducing it to something that's more attainable and doing longer agendas, right? So that we can really make these meetings impactful.
But with all honesty, I think that we're always going to have that problem. I mean, before pre-COVID, I don't recall having quorum issues as much as we did now. I think we've gotten used to this whole online thing, and the state hasn't realized the monster that it created.
I think that's right. And it's.
And it's not just our committee. I belong to another committee. We have the same issue. And I've heard from the other commissioners, they have the same issue where the meetings are just canceled. And I don't know what, we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So I think the
My
reality is,
recommendation-
thank you for letting us know, but Helen, I think at the end of it, it is what it is. And if we don't have meetings when people are not here, we just move on to the next
Yeah,
one.
I'd say the only thing is, it's people are planning for it, right? It's usually, it's 4:30 on the day of where, I know I've cleared my docket and I've planned for it and I've arranged my client life around it, my family life around it. And that's hard over time.
Oh, yeah.
So I just think, again, it sounds like folks are happy to keep it as it is. That's great. That sounds fine. I'm just previewing that, the quorum issue is not going to go away, not until the General Assembly speaks and revises what is a ridiculous policy. I think we're all wildly in agreement on that, right? We effectively ran the work that we did with way more participation when we were able to do this from the comfort of our homes and our other lives. That is no longer the reality. And so there is a hurdle and there is a barrier to the work that we're doing. I'm identifying it. Right? We want to stay status quo, let's do it. And y'all can take it up in Q1 or, Q2 if it's an issue. Okay, I think, final thing on our decks. Stefan and Fatima, thank you very much for taking the pen on the letter to Marcy Foster with recommendations that we I think aligned on at our last meeting. And Wanda, we, for whatever reason, our September meeting recording isn't available. There was some tech issue, but we had a very good, productive conversation with HR where we talked a bit about some of the recommendations we heard from the vendor on the affirmative action plan. And it was a good dialogue on some areas of improvement or things that we might recommend that they undertake. And Stefan and Fatima memorialized it in a nice written letter from the commission, which we circulated about, 10 days ago. And that is on our docket today. If everybody's had a chance to review the letter. Does anybody have any concerns or edits to the letter? Are we in agreement to send it out?
I move that we approve the letter.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
By the way,
Very good.
Stefan
Very good.
deserves credit for having written it. I just edited it, so I just want to thank him for.
Thank you for doing it.
Very
Credit
good
where
stuff.
credit is due.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay, so we will get the letter out. And I think with that, we have concluded our chair update portion. Wanda, we took your public comment a little bit early on our agenda, but thank you for sharing it at the point where it was germane. Gurjeet, anything on executive director's report?
No, so we don't have any update. We are finalizing the AAP, we've gotten the draft, and we have no extensions. And then I did get questions from you, Stefan, so I'm hoping we can move that to the summer meeting and we can get you that information out on the statistical reports. And that's all.
Yep, and Stefan, feel free to articulate the question just for the benefit of the other commissioners so we know what you're curious about.
I guess what I really bore down on this month's statistical report, and I saw, for instance, there were a lot of administrative dismissals, and it seems like every year that there's a bunch of them, and there's very few dispositions that a complainant would find positive, either that there's a ruling for them or a settlement. Those were the only thing. And so I wondered historically whether those trends seem to be accurate, and kind of more holistically how the staff views complaints. Like, is it just something to, crank through them in any way and finish them up? Or is it to find, something? So I wanted to have, it was partly what's the answer to the specific questions, but it's more that we can have a discussion and provide our recommendations to staff about the complaint process. And parenthetically, and I had mentioned this to you, and then I talked to Christian about it, my prior tenure on the commission, which finished in 2005, we had appeals almost every month, sometimes two a night. And there's been one appeal since I was here. Helen said very few in your tenure. I kind of wanted to know why that's the case. Is it because there are other venues? Is it because complainants don't actually know what their rights to appeal are? I just don't know what they get. So I wanted to have a discussion, and Gurjeet is going to provide some specific information to those questions.
So some of that I can let you know. One of those things I can address right now. So we don't take the complaints as something to get through. I want to make sure that everybody understands that is clear on that. We take them very thoughtfully, and we actually take them in the way we take when we come in as in the light most favorable to the complainant. So we work with them to see if, sometimes complainants don't know, often they don't know discrimination theories, right? So they don't know what they're alleging. So if we can't help them articulate an allegation that fits, well, often you may see in our decisions we'll analyze it under both theories, harassment and discrimination, because just in the event that they met both, to give them every benefit of the doubt so that all the information we collect, we're really getting at if they were harmed in any way, whether it's harassment, discrimination, retaliation. And also we do, and we can share the letter with you, we send out a letter at the end of the decision that lays out all their appeal, their review, I shouldn't say appeal, I guess it's right to review with the commission under the ordinance and all their options. They're aware of that. I think one of the reasons you may not see it, now no one can know why, we don't get as many appeals, of course, right? We're not in complainants in their minds, but I think one of the reasons, and I understand from at least Anna, who's not here today, but will be in December, is it has remained consistent in the past. I mean, I came on in 2018, and I think from what you're saying, from Helen said too, it's been pretty much similar in terms of how many you get. But I think one of the reasons is we take pains to explain our reasoning. We like to be, if anything, overly communicative with complainants and respondents, so they feel like we're not, the complaint comes in and some places will just sit there, for example, that can happen. We make sure that doesn't happen. And before the decision is issued, we will call them and explain our rationale and the reasoning. So I think that helps cut down on some of, when people understand, they don't necessarily want to appeal. Or, you know, maybe if it's employment, they've decided they're going to go to the EEOC, so they don't want to go appeal. But that's some of it. And then the other information, you know, we can definitely get you.
And I appreciate that and looking forward to it. Though the thing that struck me really most was this month there were 3 failures to cooperate and there were 7 failures to cooperate for the year out of 39. I'd like to know a little bit more about this, but I can tell you that in the one appeal that we did here, I think the entire commission was a little surprised about the disposition, not on the merits, but on the investigation, which kind of was on failure to cooperate, that the investigator didn't, you know, didn't try to reach all the witnesses and left like one message with something. I remember that. I don't know whether that was an accurate snapshot of the whole process for everyone, but that was the only information that we had was this one case. So I wanted to know more about what failure to cooperate means, because there seems like 25, not 7 out of 39, whatever that percentage is, almost 20% seems like a lot.
We can get you that. And on that
Okay.
last one, without going into it into detail, just the reason it wasn't so much that they couldn't be contacted. I think 1 or 2 witnesses, if I recall correctly, couldn't be reached, but we don't just try to reach them once. We try multiple times. As you can imagine, sometimes folks just don't call us back
Sure.
or they change their mind. In that specific one, the decision was made that, you know, even if they list 11, we also have time frames, right? Unless we come to you for a request for another year extension, we have to wrap them up. And that's not that we wouldn't investigate all 11, it's just if we think that even if we interviewed 11, we're still gonna come out the same place, we may make that decision not to. That's what that one was. But I understand and appreciate your question, so we'll get you that information next
Thank
month.
Okay, members' reports. Does anybody, I don't have officially anything on the agenda. Does anybody have anything to add before we adjourn?
No, I think I just wanted to add, last time I know that we were going around the room asking people. I think the question was, you know, whether the present conflict in the Middle East was going to, you know, create greater tension here in our communities among, you know, certain minority religious groups. And it looks like it has, and, you know, it's the anti-Semitism and both this anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, as evidenced by a situation here in Arlington where I think the Council on American Islamic Relations was scheduled to hold its 29th annual banquet Saturday night at the Crystal Gateway Marriott, and they had to cancel it because of the threat. So, you know, just a sense that I think just something to be aware of, you know, in terms of what's happening in our communities. And to the extent that, you know, we can do anything about that, I think we might want to look at that, to throw that out there for consideration.
Yeah, and you know, while we have the pen on our ordinance, it may be worth just taking another sweep through and making sure that it's robust religious expression and protections around those categories as well. So thank you for
Okay,
raising
great.
that. Okay, anything else?
Quick question, Helen. Now that Whitney's leaving and she was dealing with the whole spearhead of education, are we dropping that? Or?
No, I don't think we're dropping anything. I think we've just got to fill up our seats again
Okay.
and
I'm just curious.
assign people and.
Okay.
Great. Okay, well, 9 o'clock. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.
Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you.
Adjourn. Second? We need a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
Any objections?
Nope.